All right, welcome back, everybody. Broadcasting from Emperor's Palace this morning in Ekurhuleni. We've been here since 6 o'clock this morning. I don't know if you've noticed that the levels have gone higher and higher. I think that basically proving that everybody's arriving here now. The actual summit beginning at 9 o'clock this morning. It's being opened by our President, Jacob Zuma. We've just got word that his people are here and he is going to officially be opening this summit this morning, which I think, again, gives it even more gravitas having the president here. Hopefully we will try and grab him before that actually does begin. But, you know, it's not only South African representation, even though it's significant that it's being held here in a country that has done so much in changing over 20 years. But this really has got to do with the entire world, because we find racism in sports activities. It doesn't matter which sport you watch, whether you know it's happening or not, it is there. And that's something that I'm hearing. The cameras may not show the racism, but what happens behind the scenes is something very, very worrying. I've really got some very high-powered guests with me now that we're going to be talking about. So Mr. Yuri Bochenko, who is the UN chief in anti-racism from the United Nations, he actually heads up a panel of deliberations that are going to be happening today. Thank you for joining us. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
And our next guest with us as well is Judith McGregor, who is the British High Commissioner to South Africa. Thank you for being with us. It's really good to have you. You know, I talk about the importance of something like this. We see racism all over the world in every single country, and it doesn't matter where you are. But in sports, it seems to be a major, major problem. From the UN's perspective, how seriously are you taking this?
No, it's a very serious problem for the society, first and foremost. The sport is a part of the society. Therefore, this particular event, particular initiative, important to help the society to get rid of racism. We speak a lot about different kind of discrimination, but racism wasn't one of the major challenges for any society. And we take very seriously it in the United Nations. As you probably know, there is the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discriminations, and we will celebrate 50 years of its adoption next year. It will help us to mobilize more force around fighting racism.
Yeah.
And racism in sport, as I say, it's a part of the endeavor to fight racism everywhere.
Yeah, indeed. From the British High Commissioner's point of view, I mean, sports in the UK is massive. I mean, it's as big as it is here in South Africa. Yes. So there's a passion, and we see a lot of racism coming out of the football leagues in the UK. How seriously does the UK take this?
Well, I think we take it very seriously. I think, as we were saying, sport is a very good place in which to address this issue because it's such a popular, such a mass area of public entertainment, public concern and involvement. So the more diversity, the more non-discrimination, the more anti-racism you can put into the whole dialogue surrounding sport and the way in which sport embodies that, I think the better.
Yeah.
I think you're right. There is still, regrettably, instances in Premier Leagues, in leagues around the world, and in fact yesterday at the opening here we saw that it's a worldwide phenomenon. It's not just limited to one place, one country. And I think we all have a responsibility. So the United Nations, as we're saying, can pass extremely good and pertinent resolutions, but do they get implemented?
Yeah.
Who are the implementers? I think the question of responsibility is key for all of us, governments as well as individuals.
Yeah, that's a very important point, is the implementation of these things that are adopted by the UN. How do you monitor it? How do you ensure that it's played out on these football fields, on these tennis courts, or wherever the sporting activity takes place?
Now, in the United Nations, as well as in other regional organizations, there are plenty of different kind of monitoring mechanisms. But it's difficult to tackle racism or any other forms of discrimination through monitoring only by international or regional bodies. It's actually the national challenge.
Yeah.
It should be first and foremost addressed nationally at the national level. I wouldn't like to enumerate all the mechanisms which we have, different expert mechanism or intergovernmental mechanism. They do their job, they try their best. It's easier maybe at an expert level, a little more difficult when member states meet and discuss different issues, they have different views. But the wish is there, the willingness of all to unite in this fight against racism
Yeah.
in the United Nations, very present these
Yeah.
days.
Is it getting better or is it getting worse?
It's a difficult question. We are not very skillful, I would say, to measure racism. Therefore, I would say this initiative is very important because the global barometer, which will be established, will help to measure racism with the special indexes. There are ups and downs, I would say. We see the better in the situations, and then something happens in the society, like economic crisis, and the situation going back down, and people getting excited and worried about their jobs, about the effect of this, I would say, migration on the national situation, and it creates the additional unnecessary tension and some ugly incidents of a racist character.
Okay. There's one final question I want to ask you as well, and it was quite an important topic that you brought up, and I like this angle. I unfortunately couldn't be here last night at the gathering and through the summit in the day, so I have just come in this morning. But yesterday, one thing you did note was that there's a severe lack of players, of those that are in the game being represented in there. Doesn't this, unfortunately, bring it down a little bit? Because I think by having that representation of that face, of that person, the person you admire, you respect, and you see so much, won't that even give this more weight?
I think more emphasis by players would be great.
Yeah.
Quite a few of the videos, actually, there was a fantastic thing from Barcelona with the whole team saying no to racism, put the red card up to racism. In the audience here, we had a number of South African athletes. I think what would be great to see would be more now going forward internationally, players coming up with the red card for racism.
Yeah.
But I'd like to sort of play back that I think when we say is it getting worse, actually, when you think about multiculturalism and multiracialism, it's so much better. I just saw on Saturday the Manchester United legends playing the Orlando Pirates legends.
Yes.
Now, Viv Henderson, the captain of our team, was the first black player to play for England. I mean, when I heard that, I thought, really? Was there ever a time when people weren't doing this? I think, we take it for granted now that in all our societies, people come from lots of different walks of life, lots of different nationalities, and actually our teams, our clubs, our school teams are representing that. And maybe everything is always bumpy in life and you have to go through this process, but that affirmation that more diversity, more disadvantaged players coming into, the spotlight, I think it's forcing this issue out into the open, and I think that's for good. And I think this summit, is really, really valuable. It's putting a spotlight on it. Look around you. We've got kids, we've got athletes, we've got teams, we've got politicians, we've got presidents, we've got high-ranking UN officials, we've got the football associations. You've got a lot of the important players here. If we can also bring in the icons to really be making this a sort of, badge of faith, and I know they would, then I think, we'll be really taking this very, very much, taking it really far forward.
Absolutely, to another level. Thank you for talking to us. It's been a pleasure. Judith McGregor is the British High Commissioner to South Africa, and Mr. Yuri Borchenko is the UN Chief in Anti-Racism that's being represented here in South Africa. Thanks very much to both of you for being here. Well, the conference really is something that has taken, I think, not only South Africa but the world by storm. But you can see inside a lot of people are already arriving. They're coming. They're taking their seats. They're getting ready to participate in this summit. Now, at the end of today, they're hoping to adopt a charter for Global Watch, and that really is what this is all about: is try and getting rid of racism in all forms of sport. Something that the British High Commissioner highlighted was the fact that there should have been, or there should be, more representatives of sports players here, but not only South Africans, global ones. Now, we're very lucky to have our sports players here in South Africa being represented. In fact, my next guest is currently being mic'd up right now, and I'm going to have a conversation with her, Janine van Wyk, the Banyana captain. And I think this is really going to be a good interview to understand, firstly, the issue of racism in sports, and also being a woman playing in what one could call a very male-dominated world. Janine, welcome. So nice to have you. Welcome. Were you here yesterday?
Yes.
And what was your what was the biggest message that came up for you?
I think just watching a clip yesterday that they showed of of all the racism in sports. Obviously, that's the main reason why we are here today. And just seeing those clips of people in different countries being racist to you know, icons of the world, you know. So I mean, I grew up playing football in an all dominant black league, and I was the only white player playing, and I thought to myself, you know what, you get taught these things from a young age. You're not born with it and say, listen, I'm going to be a racist. You get taught it. And the message that came across yesterday is, if you grow up, if you adopt a child and the child is, say, Asian, that child is not going to be racist towards anyone because he grew up with a family, a loving family, not the same race or for instance, like that. So, you know, it's a great initiative that's going on here, and we need to get it out there, and especially to the children out there, because that's where it starts.
That's where it all starts, and it's good to see. There's an entire busload of school children that are here, which is important. Let's get a little bit more personal and talk about your experiences. I mean, you mentioned that you started playing football in black clubs. Did you experience any racism being that only white girl in there?
Well, I first started playing with boys, which was also really tough. You get gender equality over there, as well as discrimination in sports. And it was really tough, you know, girls who'd been playing soccer and they wanted to kick me because I'm a girl and to get off the field and so on. But the passion I have for the game, nothing could break me. And even at the age of 14, I had to find myself a club to play for because there weren't any girls' teams around. And the only league that was running was in the township. And I had to then go there. And because I love the sport so much, you know, I just had to do it. And it was pretty tough because I had a lot of comments throwing at me, what is this white person doing in our community and stuff like that. And until I had to actually prove myself to them. And I actually drew a crowd every weekend they just wanted to see the white girl play, and I didn't really take any offense to it. I knew that it would be difficult to get into those communities and for them to understand why I'm there, and I did so. But it was difficult to adapt to the different culture and the languages that my teammates spoke. But like I said, if you have the passion to do anything, you know, you say it's easy to succeed.
So I mean, you've managed to overcome through your journey sexism and racism, which are two exceptionally difficult things, and that's why as much as I want to constantly use the word racism, I think a bigger term is discrimination, because it doesn't just end at racism. There's so much discrimination in sporting, and that's why I know we're running out of time, but I have to touch on it. You look at male sporting codes and they're taken so much more seriously. We keep on focusing in on Bafana and how they're performing and how they're doing, and here's Banyana that is rising through the ranks and is doing such incredible and amazing work, and yet that the focus, it's getting there, but it isn't there enough. Is it still a major battle for you?
Not as it was before a few years ago. I mean, no one even spoke about women's football, and now it's being more recognized. I mean, I walk in the streets now and I'm just as recognized as it's Menkunya, and it's an amazing feeling. And I think women's sports in general is getting somewhere in the country. I mean, if you look at other countries, they really take pride in both female and male sport dominance in sports. So it's just the South Africans that really need to get to that stage where they really take women's sports seriously, and it is getting to that stage. The federation is taking care of it, and I heard that there will be a professional league for us coming soon, which will be absolutely amazing. And we have a lot of people talking, you know, about where else can we see women play besides in the national team. And so there are people that are really taking interest in women's sport, sports, and especially football. and hopefully it can get to the stage that it needs to be.
Yeah, and it does. And I think the big message is to have the support from the South Africans, because to fill up the stadiums when Banyana is playing and to air those visuals, it's catchy, it's contagious, and people want to be a part of it.
Yes, definitely.
That's what we need. Thank you, Janine. Thanks for talking to us. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I think this is what we needed to hear. We needed to hear from the sportswomen and sportsmen that are on the field, that go through this, and the challenges that they've had to get to the positions that Janine is in, captaining our national team of Banyana. Hasn't been easy, but she's done it, and it's that passion and determination that has led her there. But I tell you what, passion and sport go hand in hand, and that's what we need to push forward here. All right, the time is now, I think it's 8:30 here on Morning Live, and we've got some news.